I didn't know that sitting down to rest would bind my soul to a throne of ancient magic and change the fate of an entire pack. The forest behind me crackled with the sounds of pursuit. Rogue hunters who'd been tracking me for miles through territory I barely recognized. My lungs burned with each ragged breath. My legs trembled beneath me, scratched and bleeding from thorns I hadn't bothered to avoid. When I stumbled through the moss-covered entrance of what looked like an abandoned ruin, half hidden by ivy and decay, I saw only one thing: a place to hide. The harvest moon hung full and heavy in the sky, casting silver light through gaps in the ancient stone ceiling. I'd heard stories about nights like this, when the veil between worlds thinned, when old magic stirred in forgotten places. But I'd dismissed them as folklore. Tales my mother whispered before she died, leaving me with nothing but cryptic warnings and a silver pendant I didn't understand. I shouldn't have been in these woods at all. The Northern Pack's territory was forbidden to outsiders. Everyone in my small human town knew the rules. Stay on the roads, never venture past the boundary markers, and absolutely never enter the forest after dark. But the hunters hadn't cared about boundaries. They'd found me at my cottage just after sunset, their eyes gleaming with something that wasn't quite human, wasn't quite wolf. Something wrong. "Run!" my mother's voice echoed in my memory. "When they come for you, run toward the mountains. Find the old places. They'll know you." I'd thought grief had made her delirious in those final days. Now, stumbling through a chamber that pulsed with ancient power, I wasn't so sure. The room was circular, carved from black stone that seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. Symbols I didn't recognize covered the walls, swirling patterns that hurt to look at too long, as if they were moving when I wasn't watching directly. At the chamber's center, elevated on a dais of darker stone, stood a throne. It was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Black metal and stone twisted together in impossible patterns, forming a seat that looked like it had grown rather than been built. Crown-like spikes rose from its back, reaching toward the opening in the ceiling where moonlight poured down in a concentrated beam. Ethereal blue light flickered along runings carved into every surface: the armrests, the base, the towering back. Even from across the chamber, I could feel it humming with power that made my teeth ache and my skin prickle. I knew I should leave. Find another hiding place, keep running. But my legs wouldn't hold me anymore. The adrenaline that had carried me through miles of desperate flight was fading, leaving behind trembling exhaustion and fear so sharp it tasted like copper in my mouth. Behind me, voices echoed through the forest, the hunters calling to each other, coordinating their search. They were getting closer. Just for a moment, I told myself, my gaze fixed on the throne. Just long enough to catch my breath. I approached it slowly, each step sending small shocks through my worn boots, as if the stone floor itself recognized my intrusion. The blue light intensified as I climbed the dais, the runes beginning to pulse in rhythm with my heartbeat. A warning, perhaps, or recognition. My fingers brushed the armrest, cold metal that seemed to drink the warmth from my skin. The symbols carved there flared brighter, and for a moment, I swore I saw faces in the light. Women with silver eyes and crowns of moonlight. Watching. Waiting. I should have run then. Instead, driven by exhaustion and the inexplicable pull I'd felt since entering this place, I collapsed into the seat. The world stopped. Cold metal and stone that should have been unyielding suddenly warmed beneath me. The throne seemed to exhale, a sound like wind through ancient trees, and began to change. The rigid angles softened, molding themselves to my form as if the throne had been crafted specifically for my body. The armrests shifted, the back curved, the seat adjusted until I fit perfectly in its embrace. Then the blue light exploded. It erupted from every rune, every carved symbol, wrapping around my wrists like ethereal chains. Around my waist, my throat, My ankles, not burning, not painful, but absolutely inescapable. The energy pulsed and spiraled, binding me to the throne with threads of pure magic that sang in frequencies I could feel in my bones. My platinum braids, loose and tangled from my flight, began to glow with the same silver-blue light. The pendant my mother gave me, hidden beneath my torn shirt, burned hot against my chest, responding to the throne's power with its own ancient recognition. I tried to stand, panic surging through me. My hands pushed against the armrests, my legs strained, but the throne held me with gentle, implacable strength. Not restraining, claiming. No, no, no! What is this? The voice came from the entrance, deep, commanding, edged with shock and barely controlled fury. I jerked my head toward the sound and found myself staring at a man who could only be Alpha Rowan. He stood silhouetted in the archway, tall and broad-shouldered, his dark hair streaked with silver that caught the moonlight. Even in human form, power radiated from him in waves I could almost see. His steel-gray eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made me feel stripped bare, every secret exposed. Behind him, others appeared. An elderly woman with knowing eyes that widened in shock. A scarred man whose hands clenched into fists. A younger woman with the predatory grace of a natural hunter. More and more pack members crowded into the chamber, drawn by the surge of magic that must have lit up the night like a beacon. "Who are you?" Rowan demanded, his voice echoing off the stone walls. Each word carried the weight of alpha command, something that made even my human instincts want to bare my throat in submission. "How did you find this place?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. I swallowed hard and tried again. "I didn't mean to. I was running from... There were hunters." "The Luna's throne," the elderly woman breathed, stepping forward with reverence and horror warring in her expression. "Sweet moon goddess, she's sitting in the Luna's throne." A collective intake of breath swept through the assembled pack. The atmosphere shifted instantly from confused to dangerous. Growls rumbled in multiple throats. Eyes that had been merely suspicious now blazed with amber light, the precursor to shifting. "Get up," Rowan ordered, his voice deadly quiet. "Get up right now." "I'm trying." Panic made my words sharp. I pushed harder against the armrests, threw my weight forward, did everything I could to break free. "It won't let me go." The throne's energy pulsed brighter in response to my struggles, the blue light intensifying until it illuminated the entire chamber. The symbols on the walls began to glow in answer, creating a network of light that connected the throne to every surface, every corner, as if the entire structure had been built around this seat of power. "This is impossible," a man with scarred hands said. "Callum," I would later learn. "The throne has been dormant for 50 years, since the last Luna. Since she was murdered?" The elderly woman, Elder Thea, finished quietly. Her ancient eyes studied me with an expression I couldn't read. "Since the moonborn line was extinguished." "Clearly not fully extinguished," a younger woman said coldly, her tracking senses likely picking up things about me I didn't even know myself. "This girl reeks of old magic. And something else. Something..." She inhaled deeply, her expression shifting to confusion. "Bloodline magic." "That's absurd, Nadia," Rowan growled. "Look at her. She's human. She probably stumbled in here by accident and triggered some residual enchantment. Then why won't the throne release her?" Elder Thea moved closer, her movements slow and deliberate. "You know as well as I do, Alpha, that the Luna's throne cannot be deceived. It cannot be forced or tricked. It recognizes only one thing." She paused, her gaze boring into mine. "True claim?" "I don't have any claim," I protested, my voice rising with desperation. "I don't even know what this place is. I was just trying to hide from—" "Move aside," Nadia snapped, clearly unwilling to accept the impossible. She strode forward with predatory confidence, her hand reaching for my arm. "I'll remove her myself." "Don't—" Thea started to warn, but it was too late. The moment Nadia's fingers made contact with my skin, the throne reacted. Energy exploded outward in a shockwave of blue-white light. Nadia flew backward as if struck by invisible hands, crashing into Callum with enough force to send them both tumbling to the stone floor. The other pack members scattered, several shifting partially in defensive. Response: claws extending, fangs descending, eyes blazing amber. Rowan moved with fluid speed, catching himself before the energy could throw him back. He stood his ground as the light washed over him, his alpha power meeting the throne's magic in a clash I could feel in my chest. When the light faded, silence fell like a physical weight. Every eye in the chamber was fixed on me, on the throne that glowed with power it hadn't held in half a century, on the ethereal chains binding me in place, on my platinum braids now shot through with silver light. On the way, the ancient runes seemed to recognize me, pulsing in rhythm with my terrified heartbeat. "Council chamber," Rowan said finally, his voice hard as granite. "Now, all of you. Thea, Jensen, stay here and guard her. Don't touch her," he added sharply when the young male took a step toward me. "Don't get within 5 feet. We don't know what else the throne might do." "Alpha Rowan," I started, hearing the desperation in my own voice. "Please, I swear I didn't mean for this to happen. I don't know what's going on. I just want to—" Silence. The command hit me like a physical force. My words died in my throat. Rowan's gaze held mine, and in his steel-gray eyes, I saw a terrible recognition dawning. Something that made his expression shift from anger to shock, to something deeper. Something that looked almost like grief. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Laura," I whispered. "Your full name." I hesitated. My mother had always told me to keep it secret, though she'd never explained why. But trapped in a throne of ancient magic, surrounded by werewolves, secrets seemed pointless. "Laura Sylvain." The elderly woman, Thea, gasped. Several pack members exchanged sharp looks, and Rowan's face went completely still, all emotion draining from his expression like water from a broken vessel. "Sylvain," he repeated, the name falling from his lips like a curse, or a prayer. "Moon goddess, you're Elena's daughter?" The way he said my mother's name, with recognition, with old pain, sent ice through my veins. "You knew her?" I breathed. "Everyone knew her," Thea said softly, "before she disappeared, before we thought the bloodline was gone forever." She took a step closer, her aged hand trembling as she pointed at the pendant burning hot against my chest. "That mark around your neck, let me see it." With shaking hands, I pulled the pendant from beneath my torn shirt. The crescent moon cradling a star caught the blue light of the throne and blazed like a miniature sun. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Someone swore in a language I didn't recognize, and Rowan's eyes closed briefly, his jaw clenching so hard I could see the muscle jump. "The Moonborn seal," Thea whispered, her voice filled with awe and dread. "Sweet goddess above, she's not just any Sylvain." The ancient eyes lifted to mine, and in them I saw the weight of history I didn't understand. "Child, do you know what you are?" "Human, I," said weakly, though even I could hear how hollow it sounded now. "My mother always told me I was human." "Your mother," Rowan said, his voice rough with emotion he was fighting to control, "was the daughter of Sylvain Moonborn, the last Luna priestess, the woman who ruled this pack alongside my father before she was murdered by those who feared her power." His eyes opened, fixing me with an intensity that stole my breath. "If you're Elena's daughter, then you're not human, Laura Sylvain. You're the last heir of the Moonborn bloodline." "And the throne," Thea added softly, her gaze on the pulsing energy that bound me, "has been waiting 50 years for you to come home." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of ancient magic and the hammering of my heart. Outside, in the forest I'd fled through, I could still hear the hunters calling, searching for me. getting closer to this place of power that had just announced its awakening to anyone with the senses to feel it. I looked down at the ethereal chains binding me to a throne I'd never wanted, in a world I didn't understand, claiming a destiny I'd never known existed. And I realized my mother's final words hadn't been the delirious ramblings of a dying woman. They'd been a warning I was only now beginning to understand. "Remember who you are?" she'd whispered. "The moon watches over all creatures, even those who don't know they're meant to howl back." The council chamber felt like a tomb. Cold stone walls pressed in from all sides, carved with the same unsettling symbols that covered the throne room. Torches burned in iron sconces, their flickering light casting dancing shadows that made the runes appear to writhe and twist. They'd carried me here still bound to the throne's energy. Or rather, the throne had allowed itself to be moved with me in it. The blue, ethereal chains never loosening, never fading. Jensen and 2 other young males had attempted to lift the throne from its dais, and the moment their hands touched the black stone, it had simply floated. As if the laws of physics meant nothing to ancient magic that had been waiting half a century for the right bloodline to return. Now I sat in the center of the chamber, still trapped, still glowing with silver-blue light that pulsed in rhythm with my terrified heartbeat. The throne had positioned itself on the raised platform where the Alpha normally held court, forcing everyone to look up at me. A mockery of power I didn't want and couldn't escape. Alpha Rowan stood at the base of the platform, his arms crossed over his broad chest, his steel-gray eyes never leaving my face. Around him the council had assembled, Elder Thea with her ancient knowing gaze, Callum with his scarred hands clenched into fists, Nadia still nursing bruised ribs from where the throne had thrown her. Others I didn't recognize filled the chamber, their expressions ranging from hostile to terrified to calculating. "This is sacrilege," Callum said, his voice hard as the stone walls. "A human sitting in the Luna's throne is an affront to everything we stand for, to our traditions, to the memory of every Luna who came before." "She's not just any human," Thea countered quietly. "The Moonborn seal doesn't lie. That pendant has been passed down through Luna priestesses for 12 generations. If she carries it, then her mother stole it when she fled," Nadia interrupted coldly. "We all know the story. Elena Sylvain disappeared 30 years ago, pregnant with a half-blood child. She chose exile. She chose the human world. This girl," she gestured at me with barely concealed contempt, "is the result of that choice. Diluted bloodline, tainted by human weakness." "The throne doesn't seem to think she's weak," a younger male observed from the back of the chamber. Several pack members shot him warning glares, but he stood his ground. "I've never seen it react like this, not even for Luna Sylvain before she died." "Enough." Rowan's single word cut through the rising arguments like a blade. Silence fell immediately, the weight of Alpha Command settling over the chamber. He climbed the steps slowly, each footfall deliberate, until he stood directly in front of me. "Laura Sylvain, tell me exactly what happened, from the beginning." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "I was at my cottage, just outside the human town of Millbrook. I've lived there my whole life. It was my mother's house before she died last year." The words tumbled out faster as I went, desperation making them sharp. "I was making tea when they came, 3 of them. They broke down my door and they weren't fully human. Their eyes were wrong, gold and wild, like yours but corrupted somehow." "Rogues," Rowan said quietly, glancing at Nadia. "How many in the area?" "We've been tracking a pack of 5 for the last month," she admitted grudgingly. "They've been circling our territory but staying just outside the boundary markers. We thought they were scouting for weaknesses." "They were hunting for her," Thea said softly. "Someone told them where to find the last Moonborn heir." Ice slid down my spine. "How would they even know about me? I didn't know about me until 20 minutes ago." "Your mother must have hidden you using blood magic," Thea explained, her aged hands gesturing to the pendant still glowing against my chest. The Moonborn seal doesn't just mark you as heir, it conceals your true nature. But when she died, she trailed off meaningfully. The concealment broke, I finished, horror dawning. That's why I've been having dreams, why I've felt like something was watching me, why… I stopped, remembering the strange pull I'd felt toward the forest, toward this place. The throne was calling me. Impossible! Callum spat. The throne has no consciousness. It's simply enchanted to recognize Luna blood. This is some trick, some manipulation meant to destabilize our pack during the harvest moon when we're most vulnerable. Then, why can't she stand? Rowan interrupted, his gaze still fixed on mine. Go ahead, Laura. Try. Show the council it's all an act. I didn't need to be told twice. I pushed against the armrests with everything I had, throwing my weight forward, straining every muscle. The blue chains tightened, not painfully, but with absolute certainty. The throne hummed beneath me, a sound I felt more than heard, and the symbols carved into its surface flared brighter. Nothing. I couldn't move an inch. You see? Thea said. The throne has claimed her. It recognizes her bloodline, her right. Her right? Nadia stepped forward, fury written across her elegant features. She has no rights here. She wasn't raised pack. She doesn't know our laws, our traditions, our ways. She can't shift, can't hunt, can't defend this territory. What kind of Luna would that make her? The kind the throne chose, a new voice said from the doorway. All heads turned. Kira stood in the entrance, her young face set with determination that reminded me painfully of her father's expression. She wasn't alone. Behind her, at least a dozen younger pack members crowded the hallway, their eyes gleaming in the torchlight. Kira, Rowan said, warning in his tone. This is council business. This is pack business, she countered, walking into the chamber with the fearlessness of youth. And we're pack too. The throne hasn't accepted anyone in 50 years, Father. 50 years of waiting, of being incomplete. Now it chooses, and your first instinct is to question its judgment? The throne might be responding to stolen magic, Callum argued, to blood manipulation. Then test her, Kira said simply. She looked at me, and in her eyes I saw something unexpected. Hope. If she's truly Moonborn, if the throne's claim is genuine, there's one way to prove it beyond doubt. Elder Thea's breath caught. Child, you're not suggesting… The Luna's trial, Kira finished. 3 tests of strength, wisdom, and spirit. If she passes, no one can question her right. If she fails… She paused, her gaze sliding to her father. The throne will know, and it will release her. The chamber erupted in arguments, some supporting the idea, others decrying it as madness. But Rowan held up a hand, and again, silence fell. He studied me for a long moment, those steel-gray eyes searching for something I wasn't sure I possessed. Agreed, he said finally. 3 days, 3 trials. If the throne truly has chosen you, Laura Sylvain, then you'll prove you're worthy of the power it's granted you. His expression hardened. And if you're not, the throne will consume you, just as it has every false Luna who tried to claim it before. The blue chains pulsed once, as if in agreement. And I realized that running from my destiny had only led me straight into its waiting arms. The council chamber cleared slowly after Rowan's decree, pack members filing out in clusters, their voices low and urgent as they debated what they'd witnessed. Some cast fearful glances back at me. Others looked angry, betrayed, as if my very existence was a personal insult. A few, mostly the younger ones who'd come with Kira, offered hesitant nods that might have been encouragement, or simply acknowledgement that I was real and not some fever dream conjured by forbidden magic. Kira was the last to leave, her hand resting briefly on her father's arm. You know what this means, she said quietly, though I still heard every word in the stone chamber's acoustics. If she's really Moonborn, I know. Rowan cut her off, his voice rough. Go. Make sure the younger pack members don't do anything foolish. And send word to the border patrols about those rogues. If they're hunting Moonborn blood, they won't stop just because she's found sanctuary here. Sanctuary. The word felt hollow when I was still trapped in a throne that wouldn't release me, facing trials that could kill me in 3 days. Kira squeezed his arm once more and left, pulling the heavy wooden doors closed behind her. The sound of the latch falling into place echoed like a cell door locking. Now only 3 of us remained. Rowan, still standing at the base of the platform with his arms crossed. Elder Thea, who had settled into a chair near the wall, her ancient eyes never leaving my face. And me, bound to a throne I'd never asked for, glowing with power I didn't understand. The seal, Thea said into the weighted silence. May I examine it more closely? I nodded, not trusting my voice. The pendant still burned hot against my sternum, as if the metal itself had come alive when the throne claimed me. Thea rose with the careful movements of someone whose bones remembered centuries of service, and climbed the platform steps. She stopped just outside the range where Nadia had been thrown back, her weathered hand extended. May I approach? The question wasn't directed at me. The throne pulsed once, and the blue energy surrounding me seemed to ripple, creating a gap, an invitation. Thea stepped through carefully, her breath catching as the ethereal chains parted around her like water around stone. When she reached my side, she bent close, her fingers hovering over the pendant without quite touching. Moon silver, she breathed, forged in the light of 13 full moons and quenched in spring water blessed by the first Luna priestesses. There are only 3 pieces like this left in existence. One was buried with Luna Sylvain when she died. One was lost during the massacre 50 years ago. Her eyes lifted to mine. And one disappeared with Elena when she fled into exile, pregnant and alone. My mother never told me it was special, I whispered. She said it would keep me safe, that the moon watches over all creatures. Even those who cannot howl back, Thea finished, and shock must have shown on my face because she smiled sadly. That was Sylvain's favorite saying. She believed the moon goddess blessed all her children equally, wolf and human alike. It made her controversial among the traditionalists. It made her dangerous, Rowan said from below, his voice carrying the weight of old pain. My father's council feared her influence. They thought she was weakening the pack by advocating for human-wolf cooperation, for opening our borders, for... He stopped, his jaw clenching. For predicting the very future that came to pass, Thea said quietly. Sylvain was a seer as well as a Luna. She warned them that isolation would be our destruction, that the old ways needed to evolve or we would fracture from within. Her gnarled fingers finally touched the pendant, and when they did, it flared so bright I had to close my eyes. She saw the betrayal coming, saw the rogues being hired, saw the ambush that would take her life. Then why didn't she stop it? I demanded, frustration and grief mixing in my chest. Why let herself be killed if she knew? Because she also saw what would happen if she ran, Rowan answered, and when I opened my eyes, he'd climbed the steps to stand beside Thea. His steel-gray gaze was fixed on the pendant, on the light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with both my heartbeat and the throne's energy. She saw the pack splintering completely. Civil war, extinction within a generation. So she stayed, Thea continued, her voice thick with emotion. She sent Elena away in secret, already pregnant with you. She hid the pregnancy using blood magic so powerful it fooled even the pack's best trackers. And then she walked into the trap that killed her. Knowing her sacrifice would buy time, would keep the pack together just long enough. For her heir to return, I finished, understanding dawning like ice water in my veins. She knew I would come back. She saw it. More than that, Thea said. She released the pendant and stepped back, her ancient eyes glistening. She ensured it. The throne's binding isn't random, child. It's not simply recognizing your bloodline. It's responding to an enchantment Sylvain wove into it before she died. A failsafe. A summons that would activate when her true heir came of age, and the pack's need was greatest. Rowan's hands clenched into fists. You're saying she planned this? All of this? I'm saying she was a seer of extraordinary power, who loved this pack enough to orchestrate her own death, and her daughter's exile to save it. Thea's voice was gentle, but implacable. Elena must have known. The blood magic concealing Laura would only hold while Elena lived. When she died, the rogues could suddenly sense me, I said, pieces clicking into horrible place. The dream started, the pull toward the forest, toward this place. I looked at the throne beneath me, at the blue energy binding me, and felt something close to betrayal. I never had a choice. This was always going to happen. Destiny rarely offers choices, Thea said. Only paths. Your grandmother saw the path that led to survival. Your mother walked it, even knowing the cost. Now the path has led you here. To trials that could kill me, I said bitterly. To a pack that doesn't want me. To power I never asked for and don't know how to use. To exactly where you need to be, Rowan said, and when I met his eyes I saw something shift in their depths. Not acceptance, not yet. But perhaps the beginning of understanding. The rogues who hunted you, they weren't random. Someone hired them, someone who knows what you are and wants the Moonborn line extinguished completely. The same faction that killed Sylvain, Thea agreed. They've been waiting, watching, ensuring no heir survived to reclaim the throne. Elena's death broke the concealment. Your existence became visible to those with eyes to see. She touched my shoulder gently. Child, the trials aren't just about proving yourself to the pack. They're about awakening the power sleeping in your blood. Power you'll need to survive what's coming. What is coming? I asked, though part of me already knew. War, Rowan said simply. The same war Sylvain died trying to prevent. The same war Elena fled to protect you from. He looked at the throne, at the way it held me, claimed me, bound me to a destiny written before I was born. And the throne has decided you're the weapon we need to fight it. The blue chains pulsed, neither confirming nor denying, simply existing as they'd existed for 50 years, waiting for the right bloodline to return, waiting for me. I thought of my mother's final words, her trembling hands pressing the pendant into my palm, the fear and love and terrible knowledge in her eyes as she'd whispered her cryptic warning. She'd known I would end up here, trapped in her mother's throne, facing her mother's unfinished war. When do the trials begin? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Rowan's expression held something that might have been respect. Tomorrow at dawn, the first trial tests strength, physical and magical. If you survive it, we move to wisdom. Then spirit. He paused. The throne will guide you, or it will consume you. Those are the only outcomes. Then I'd better survive, I said, meeting his gaze and refusing to look away. Because I was Laura Sylvain, daughter of Elena, granddaughter of Sylvain Moonborn, and the throne had been waiting 50 years for me to come home. They left me alone in the council chamber as night deepened outside, the throne finally, mercifully, allowing me to stand. The blue chains didn't disappear, but they loosened, becoming translucent threads that connected me to the seat like an invisible tether. I could move within the chamber, but when I tried to approach the doors, the energy pulled taut, stopping me as gently and absolutely as iron bars. A prison made of ancient magic and destiny I hadn't chosen. I'd almost dozed off, exhausted and terrified in equal measure, when the doors opened near midnight. Elder Thea entered carrying an oil lamp that cast dancing shadows across her weathered face, making the lines there seem deeper, older, as if she carried the weight of centuries rather than merely decades. "Come," she said without preamble. "There's something you need to see before the first trial. Something your mother left for you." The throne pulsed once, and the blue tether extending from my wrists suddenly stretched, allowing me to cross the chamber. I followed Thea into the corridor, acutely aware of the thread of energy trailing behind me like a leash made of moonlight. We descended. Down stone steps worn smooth by generations of pack members, through passages that grew narrower and colder with each level. The air changed, becoming thick with the scent of old paper and older magic. Symbols carved into the walls began to glow faintly as we passed, responding to the throne's energy that surrounded me. "The archives," Thea explained, as we reached a massive wooden door bound with iron and etched with protective runes. "Only the Luna and the pack's record keeper have access. When Sylvain died and Elena fled, I became both." She pressed her palm against the door, and it swung open with a groan of ancient hinges. "I've been waiting 30 years for someone who could open the deepest chamber." The archive was vast, stretching into shadows the lamplight couldn't penetrate. Shelves lined every wall, packed with leather-bound volumes, loose scrolls, and items wrapped in cloth that hummed with preserved magic. The ceiling disappeared into darkness overhead, and I had the dizzying sense that this space was larger than the pack house above it. Impossibly large, expanded by the same magic that made the throne float. Thea led me past centuries of recorded history, past shelves marked with dates that predated the town I'd grown up in, past artifacts that made my skin prickle with residual power. We stopped at the very back of the archive, where the stone wall appeared solid and unmarked. "Your grandmother sealed this before she died," Thea said quietly. "Blood magic so powerful I couldn't break it even after she was gone. But you—" She gestured to the blue energy surrounding me. "You carry her bloodline and the throne's claim. Touch the wall." I pressed my palm against cold stone, and the world exploded with light. The wall didn't crumble or fade, it simply ceased to exist, revealing a small chamber beyond. And there, on a stone pedestal in the center, sat a leather journal so old the cover had faded to gray. Beside it lay a sealed envelope with my name written in handwriting I recognized immediately. My mother's. My hands shook as I picked up the envelope, breaking the wax seal that had preserved it for, I checked the date, 23 years. Since before I was born. The paper inside was thick, expensive, covered in my mother's elegant script. "My dearest Laura, if you're reading this, then I am dead, and the concealment I wove around you has finally broken. I'm so sorry, my darling girl. Sorry for the lies. Sorry for the life I stole from you by hiding what you are. But I would make the same choice 1,000 times over, if it meant keeping you safe just a little longer. You must have questions. The journal beside this letter holds most of the answers. Your grandmother's words, her visions, her plans. But there are things I need to tell you myself. Things only I know. I was 16 when they came for us. The faction my mother had warned the pack about, traditionalists who believed Luna priestesses held too much power, who thought seers were abominations that upset the natural order. They hired rogues from the southern territories, wolves with no pack loyalty and no conscience. 20 of them against my mother and father and the few council members who remained loyal. The massacre lasted 3 hours. I hid in the very archives where you're reading this now, pressed into a secret space my mother had shown me, just in case. I heard everything. The screams, the fighting, the moment my mother's voice cut off mid-prayer to the moon goddess. When silence finally fell, I waited. I stayed hidden for 2 days, barely breathing, while the rogues searched the pack house above. They knew my mother had a daughter. They had orders to ensure the bloodline ended completely. Elder Thea found me. She was the only council member who survived, and only because she'd been away gathering herbs when the attack began. She brought me food, water, and terrible news. My father was dead. My mother was dead. 17 pack members lay slaughtered in the ceremonial chamber where the Luna's throne sat empty, still glowing with my mother's fading magic. And I was pregnant with you. I had to stop reading, my vision blurring with tears. My mother had never told me about my father, had never even hinted that she'd known love before the quiet, isolated life we'd shared in Millbrook. Thea helped me flee. We used blood magic, dangerous, forbidden magic that my mother had taught me in secret, to conceal your existence, to make you appear fully human to any supernatural senses. It should have been impossible. You were already half wolf, already carrying the Moonborn gifts. But your grandmother had foreseen this moment, had left instructions for the very spell we needed. The magic came at a cost. It would only hold as long as I lived. The moment I died, you would become visible to those hunting our bloodline. And there was another price, one I paid willingly. Every day, the concealment remained active. It fed on my life force, aging me faster, weakening me. I knew I would never see you fully grown, never watch you become the woman I glimpsed in the mirror of your grandmother's visions. But I got 23 years with you, my darling. 23 years of teaching you to be strong, to be brave, to trust your instincts. 23 years of preparing you for a destiny I prayed you'd never have to face. The throne is calling you back. I can feel it even now, as I write, this letter with you sleeping peacefully in the next room, only 6 months old. Your grandmother wove a summoning into its very essence, one that would activate when you came of age and the pack's need became critical. Read her journal. Learn what she foresaw. Understand why she sacrificed herself. Why I sacrificed my life. Why the throne won't release you until you fulfilled the purpose we were all born to serve. And know this, my precious girl. You are stronger than you believe. Braver than you know. The Moonborn line doesn't end with you. It transforms. Becomes something new. Something necessary. Trust the throne. Trust yourself. And when the trials come, because they will come, remember that you carry the strength of every Luna who came before. With all my love, forever and always, Mom. The letter slipped from my fingers, drifting to the stone floor. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the roaring in my ears. 23 years. My mother had known for 23 years that she was dying to keep me hidden, had watched herself age, had felt her strength failing, and never once told me the truth. She loved you more than life itself, Thea said softly from the chamber entrance. Elena could have broken the concealment any time, could have extended her own life by exposing you. She chose differently. I picked up my grandmother's journal with trembling hands, opening to the first page. The handwriting was different from my mother's. Bolder, more confident, written in ink that still gleamed silver after 50 years. To my granddaughter, who I will never meet in this lifetime. My name is Sylvain Moonborn, Luna of the Northern Pack, Seer of the Third Order, and your legacy. I am writing this 3 days before my death. A death I have seen in visions for the past decade. A death I walk toward willingly because it is the only path that leads to survival. You will think me cruel for orchestrating your mother's exile and your hidden childhood. You will rage against the destiny I've woven for you. But you will understand in time why some prices must be paid. The rest of the page contained dates, names, events my grandmother had foreseen with terrifying accuracy. The massacre. Elena's pregnancy. My birth. Even the rogues who would eventually hunt me. And at the bottom, underlined 3 times, a single sentence that made my blood run cold. The trials will break you. Let them. What reforms from the shards will be strong enough to survive what comes next. I looked at Thea, at the sympathy and ancient knowledge in her eyes. What comes next? I whispered. She picked up the lamp, its light catching on the journal's silver ink. Turn to the last page, your grandmother's final vision, the one she died to make possible. My hands shook as I flipped to the end, where my grandmother's handwriting had become rushed, desperate, as if she'd been racing against time itself. And there, in words that seemed to burn themselves into my retinas, I read, my future. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't sleep with my grandmother's final vision burning behind my eyelids every time I closed them. Words about war and betrayal, and a choice that would either save the pack or destroy it completely. Words that made it clear why the throne had waited 50 years for me specifically. Not just any moonborn heir, but the one my grandmother had seen standing at the crossroads of the pack's survival. Thea had left me in the Luna's chambers just before dawn, rooms that had been sealed since my grandmother's death. The furniture was covered in white sheets like ghosts, and dust motes danced in the first rays of sunlight, filtering through leaded glass windows. The throne's energy had finally released me here, the blue chains fading to nothing, though I could still feel the connection thrumming beneath my skin, like a second heartbeat. I was standing at the window, watching the pack grounds wake to morning routines, when the door opened without a knock. Alpha Rowan entered, and in the gray dawn light, he looked older than he had in the council chamber. Tired. Shadows darkened the skin beneath his steel-gray eyes, and his dark hair, shot through with that distinctive silver, was disheveled as if he'd been running his hands through it all night. "We need to talk," he said, closing the door behind him with careful control. "Before the first trial begins. Before the pack gathers to watch you either succeed or—" He stopped, his jaw clenching. "Die?" I finished, turning to face him fully. "You can say it. I read my grandmother's journal. I know the trials have killed false Lunas before. I know the throne's magic doesn't forgive weakness." Something flickered across his expression. Surprise, maybe, or reassessment. He crossed to the window, standing close enough that I caught his scent. Pine and smoke and something wilder, something that made the dormant wolf in my blood stir restlessly. "You said you knew my mother," I said into the weighted silence. Elder Thea implied it was more than just passing knowledge. "So tell me the truth, Alpha. What was Elena to you?" His hands gripped the window ledge hard enough that I heard wood creak. "She was my friend. One of the few people in this pack who treated me like a person, instead of just the Alpha's son." His voice was rough, scraped raw with old grief. "Your mother was 17 when she fled. I was 19, newly bonded to my mate Serena, helping my father navigate the aftermath of the massacre." "You knew she was alive," I said, understanding dawning cold and sharp. "All these years you knew." "My father knew," Rowan corrected. "He helped her escape, gave her money, false papers, a contact in the human world who could hide her." He finally turned to face me, and the pain in his eyes was naked. Terrible. The pack was fracturing. Half wanted vengeance for Sylvain's death. The other half, the traditionalists, were quietly relieved that the troublesome seer was gone. If they'd known Elena survived, known she was pregnant with Sylvain's grandchild, they would have hunted her down, I finished. Finished what the rogues started. Yes. The word fell like a stone. So my father made a choice. He told the pack Elena had died with her mother. Had the records altered? Swore me and Elder Thea to secrecy. His hands clenched into fists. He convinced himself it was for the greater good. That pack stability mattered more than one girl's life. More than the truth. "And you?" I asked, hearing the accusation in my own voice. "Did you convince yourself of that too?" "I tried to," Rowan admitted. "For 30 years I tried to believe my father made the right choice. That keeping the peace was worth the lie. Worth abandoning Elena to raise you alone, hidden, always looking over her shoulder." He moved closer, and I saw the weight of that guilt written in every line of his face. "Then you sat in the throne, and it all came apart." "The throne forced the truth," I said, understanding the real reason for his exhaustion, his visible struggle. made you confront what your father did, what you allowed to continue. More than that. His voice dropped lower, becoming something dangerous and desperate. The throne didn't just recognize your bloodline, Laura. It activated something else. Something I felt the moment you touched it. The air between us suddenly felt electric, charged with energy that had nothing to do with ancient magic, and everything to do with the way his eyes had darkened, the way my pulse had kicked up in response. "What are you saying?" I whispered, though part of me already knew. Had felt it too, that pull, that recognition, like two magnets forced into alignment. "I'm saying the throne is doing what it was designed to do, what your grandmother built into its very essence." Rowan's control was slipping, his alpha presence filling the room until I could barely breathe. "It's not just claiming you as Luna, it's forging a mate bond between you and me." The words hit like a physical blow. "No, you had a mate, Serena. You said—" "Serena died 5 years ago," he said, and grief roughened his voice. "I loved her, mourned her, thought I would never feel that bond again." His hands came up as if to touch me, then fell. "But the throne doesn't care about what I want, about what either of us wants. It cares about the pack's survival, and according to your grandmother's vision, the pack needs a Luna and Alpha who are bonded, who can channel power together." "I don't want this," I said, backing away until I hit the window. "I didn't ask to be Luna, didn't ask to have some magical bond forced on me with a man I don't even know." "You think I want this?" Rowan's laugh was harsh, bitter. "You think I want to feel drawn to the daughter of the girl my father betrayed? To feel the mate bond awakening for someone who has every right to hate me, hate this pack, hate everything we stand for?" He closed, the distance between us in 2 strides, caging me against the window with his arms. "But I feel it anyway. Every time you're near. Every time the throne's magic pulses. Like recognition I can't deny." I could feel it too, now that he'd named it. The invisible thread connecting us, different from the throne's chains but just as inescapable. My grandmother had planned this, had woven it into the throne's enchantment alongside the summoning and the trials. "Why?" I demanded, looking up into his storm-gray eyes. "Why would she do this? Force a bond between us?" "Because she saw what's coming," Rowan said. "The war. The faction that killed her is regrouping, stronger now, with allies we don't fully understand. And she saw that the only way the pack survives is if Luna and Alpha are perfectly synchronized. One mind, one purpose." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "One bond that cannot be broken." "I could fail the trials," I said desperately. "The throne could reject me. The bond could—" "The bond is already forming," he interrupted. "I can feel your emotions bleeding through, your fear, your anger, your determination." His forehead nearly touched mine. "If you fail the trials, if the throne consumes you, this half-formed bond will tear me apart. Another loss I'm not sure I could survive." The confession hung between us, raw and vulnerable. This powerful Alpha, admitting that my death would break him. Not because he loved me, we were strangers, but because fate and ancient magic had tangled our souls together before we'd had any choice in the matter. "I don't know how to be Luna," I whispered. "Don't know how to be your mate. I'm just Laura, the girl who made tea and lived quietly and never asked for destiny to come crashing through her door." "I know," Rowan said, and something in his voice gentled. "But that girl survived rogues hunting her. Found her way to the throne when she could have run anywhere else. Faced a hostile pack and didn't break." His hand finally touched my face, carefully, as if I might shatter. "That's not just anything, Laura Sylvain. That's the strength your grandmother saw, the strength the throne recognized." The mate bond pulsed, and I felt what he felt. Not love, not yet, but respect, recognition, and underneath it all, a terror that matched my own. We were 2 people forced into roles we never wanted, bound together by magic and prophecy, and the ghosts of those who'd sacrificed everything to make this moment possible. "The first trial starts in an hour," Rowan said quietly, stepping back and breaking the spell. "I'll be watching. The whole pack will be watching." His eyes held mine. "But know this, I'm not watching to see you fail. I'm watching because if you survive, if the throne fully claims you—" He trailed off. "Then we face whatever comes next together," I finished. "Together," he agreed. And in that single word I heard both a promise and a prayer. The pack gathered in a natural amphitheater carved into the mountainside behind the pack house. Stone seats arranged in concentric circles around a flat expanse of bare earth marked with symbols that glowed faintly in the morning light. Hundreds of wolves, in human form but radiating barely contained power, filled the seats, their voices creating a low rumble of anticipation and judgment. I stood at the center of the marked ground, wearing simple clothes Thea had provided, dark leggings and a tunic that wouldn't restrict movement. The moonborn seal hung visible against my chest now, no longer hidden. No point in concealment when the entire pack knew what I was supposed to be. Rowan stood at the edge of the circle with the council, his expression carefully neutral, but I felt his presence through the bond like heat against my skin. Concern. Fear. Something deeper he was trying to suppress. Elder Thea stepped forward, her voice carrying across the amphitheater with surprising strength. The first trial tests strength, not merely of body, but of spirit and magic. The Luna must be able to defend her pack, to channel the power the throne grants her, to become a weapon when needed. She raised a gnarled hand, and the symbols on the ground flared brighter. "Laura Sylvain, the trial begins when you call the throne's power. It ends when you prove you can control it." "And if I can't control it?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Then it will consume you," Thea said simply. "As it has every false Luna who tried and failed. Your body will burn from the inside out, and the throne will return to dormancy, waiting for a true heir." Comforting. I could feel the weight of hundreds of eyes on me, measuring, judging. Some hopeful. Kira and the younger wolves clustered together in the front rows. Others hostile. Callum and his faction, waiting for me to fail, to prove their prejudice correct. I closed my eyes and reached for the connection I'd felt since sitting in the throne. The invisible tether that bound me to ancient magic and impossible destiny. At first, nothing. Just my own heartbeat. My own fear. Then, there. A pulse of blue light in my mind's eye, distant but growing closer. The throne responding to my call, its power flowing through the connection like water through a dam about to break. The symbols on the ground exploded with light. Energy surged into me, and I gasped as it filled my veins like liquid lightning. Not painful, but overwhelming. Too much, too fast, threatening to split me apart from the inside. I could feel every cell in my body awakening, changing, remembering what they'd been before my mother's concealment magic had suppressed them. My skin began to glow. Not the gentle shimmer of before, but brilliant silver-blue light that made wolves in the front rows shield their eyes. The runes I'd seen on the throne started appearing on my arms, my shoulders, crawling up my neck like living tattoos written in pure magic. "Don't fight it," Thea called, her voice seeming to come from very far away. "Let the power show you what you are." What I was, what I'd always been beneath the lie my mother had woven to keep me safe. The change started in my bones, not breaking, but reshaping, becoming denser, stronger. My muscles corded with new strength. My senses exploded outward. Suddenly I could smell everything, hear everything, feel the vibration of hundreds of heartbeats in the stone seats around me. The world became sharper, clearer, painted in colors I'd never seen before. My hands shifted first, fingers lengthening, nails becoming claws that gleamed like polished obsidian. But not fully wolf, something between. Something hybrid. My legs changed next, powerful and digitigrade, built for speed and lethal grace. I looked down at myself and saw silver blonde fur marked with the same glowing runes spreading across my torso, my limbs. Saw my platinum braids now shot through with threads of pure light. Felt my face restructure, not into a wolf's muzzle, but something more elegant, more terrible. My reflection appeared in the polished stone at the circle's edge, a creature that was neither fully human nor fully wolf, but a perfect fusion of both. My eyes burned silver blue, the same color as the throne's magic. Power radiated from me in visible waves, making the air shimmer. The amphitheater had gone completely silent. "Impossible," someone breathed. Callum, his voice strangled. "The hybrid form hasn't been seen since the first Luna priestesses walked these mountains," Thea finished, and I heard awe in her ancient voice. "Since before we forgot that wolves and humans were meant to be bridges between worlds, not separate species." She looked at Rowan. "Your grandmother didn't just see the future, Alpha. She saw the past, saw what we'd lost when we chose isolation over evolution." I turned to face Rowan, and through the mate bond I felt his shock, his wonder, and underneath it all, recognition. As if some part of him had been waiting for this, for me, without even knowing it. "The trial isn't finished," a harsh voice interrupted. Nadia stepped into the circle, her eyes gleaming amber with the promise of her own shift. "She's transformed. Now let's see if she can fight." Before Rowan could protest, Nadia shifted, a blur of motion as her human form melted into a massive gray wolf, easily twice my size in this hybrid state. She circled me with predatory grace, lips pulled back to reveal fangs designed to tear through flesh and bone. The pack erupted in shouts, some approving, some protesting. But the trial grounds were sacred. Once combat began, no one could interfere. Nadia lunged. Instinct took over, instinct I'd never known I possessed. I moved, and the world slowed around me. I could see every muscle in Nadia's powerful body, could predict her trajectory before she'd fully committed to it. The throne's power sang through my hybrid form, enhancing everything, making me faster, stronger, more lethal than should have been possible. I sidestepped her attack with inches to spare, my clawed hand lashing out to catch her flank. Silver blue energy crackled where we connected, and Nadia yelped as the magic threw her backwards. She rolled to her feet, snarling, more cautious now. We circled each other while the pack watched in breathless silence. She attacked again, feinting left before going for my throat. I blocked with an arm that suddenly felt encased in energy, the throne's power forming a shield that turned her fangs aside. Then I went on the offensive. I moved like I'd been born to this form, like 30 years of suppression had only compressed the power waiting to explode. Each strike carried the throne's magic, blue lightning arcing from my claws. Not trying to kill, some instinct told me that would cross a line, but to dominate, to prove myself worthy. Nadia was skilled, experienced, deadly. But she was fighting against ancient power and bloodline magic that remembered how to wage war when her ancestors were still learning to hunt. I caught her mid-leap, using her own momentum to slam her into the ground. My clawed hand pressed against her throat, not breaking skin, but making the threat clear. Blue energy crackled around us both, and I felt the throne's power waiting for my command. One word, and it would end her. "Yield," I said, and my voice was different, layered with harmonics that weren't quite human, carrying the weight of Lunas who'd spoken the same words centuries ago. Nadia's eyes, still amber with her wolf, met mine. For a long moment I thought pride would make her refuse. Then slowly, deliberately, she bared her throat. The ultimate submission. I released her and stepped back, the combat haze fading. The hybrid form wanted to continue, wanted to dominate every challenger until none remained. But I was still Laura beneath the power and the magic. Still the girl who'd never wanted to hurt anyone. "The first trial is complete," Thea announced, her voice carrying clearly. "Laura Sylvain has called the throne's power and proven she can control it. She has defended herself against a senior pack member and shown mercy and victory. She looked directly at me, and I saw tears on her weathered cheeks. She has passed. The younger wolves erupted in cheers. Kira was on her feet, shouting herself hoarse. Even some of the older pack members looked impressed, grudgingly nodding their approval. But I was looking at Rowan, feeling what he felt through our bond. Relief so profound it nearly brought him to his knees. And underneath it, something fiercer. Something possessive. His mate had just proven herself in combat. Had transformed into a form that shouldn't exist. Had shown power that made her worthy of standing beside an alpha. The throne's magic pulsed, satisfied. One trial down, 2 more to survive. And as I stood there in my hybrid form, marked with glowing runes and carrying the strength of my grandmother's bloodline, I realized something that should have terrified me but didn't. I was finally becoming what I'd always been meant to be. The hybrid form had faded within an hour of the trial's end. The silver-blue light receding beneath my skin like a tide pulling back from shore. But I could still feel it there. Dormant, waiting, ready to surge forth again when needed. The runes had disappeared from my visible skin, but when I caught my reflection in the Luna Chamber's mirror, I swore I could see them flickering just beneath the surface, written in my very bones. I was examining my hands, searching for traces of the claws that had extended so naturally during combat, when a soft knock interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called, expecting Thea or perhaps Rowan, drawn by the mate bond that hummed constantly between us now. Instead, Kira slipped through the door, her young face bright with barely contained excitement. She carried a tray laden with food, bread still warm from the oven, cheese, fruit, and what looked like venison stew that made my stomach growl embarrassingly loud. "Figured you'd be starving," she said with a grin, setting the tray on the small table by the window. "Shifting burns through calories like wildfire. First time's always the worst. My dad said I ate an entire deer the day I first transformed." She paused, her expression becoming more serious. "Though your shift was nothing like anything I've ever seen. The hybrid form, Laura, do you have any idea how incredible that was?" I sank into the chair across from her, suddenly exhausted. Honestly? I barely remember it. Just instinct and power and the throne's magic showing me what to do. I picked up a piece of bread, surprised by how ravenous I felt. "Is Nadia all right?" "Bruised ego mostly," Kira said with a dismissive wave. "She'll recover. Serves her right for attacking you like that. The trial was supposed to test your control, not turn into actual combat." Her amber eyes, so like her father's but warmer, younger, more hopeful, studied me carefully. "You showed mercy. You could have hurt her badly, maybe even killed her with that much power flowing through you. But you didn't." "I didn't want to hurt anyone," I said quietly. "This whole thing, the throne, the trials, becoming Luna, it's not about dominating people. At least I don't think it should be. That's exactly why we need you." Kira leaned forward, her voice dropping conspiratorially. "The younger generation, I mean. We're tired of the old ways, the rigid hierarchy, the constant posturing and challenges and treating anyone who's different as a threat." She gestured animatedly as she spoke, her passion evident. "You're different, Laura. You grew up outside the pack, lived as human, experienced a whole world beyond our territorial borders. And you're still powerful, still moonborn, still worthy. You prove that strength doesn't have to come from isolation." I swallowed a bite of stew, warmth spreading through my chest that had nothing to do with the food. "How many feel like you do?" "More than the council realizes," Kira said, her grin returning. "Maybe a third of the pack. Mostly wolves under 40, those of us who've seen how the world is changing outside our borders. We've been pushing for reforms, allowing more interaction with human communities, updating our laws, even considering alliances with other packs instead of viewing them all as potential enemies." She shook her head. But the traditionalists block everything. They want to keep us frozen in time, living exactly like wolves did centuries ago. Let me guess, I said. Callum leads the traditionalist faction. Callum, Nadia, about half the council, and at least another third of the pack. Kira's expression darkened. They see you as confirmation of their worst fears, that opening ourselves to outside influence will corrupt what they consider pure pack bloodlines. Never mind that you're the most purely moonborn wolf to sit the throne in generations. I thought about that, about the irony of being rejected for being diluted, when I carried the direct bloodline they claimed to revere. Your father, I ventured carefully. Where does he stand? Kira's smile was complicated, proud and frustrated in equal measure. Dad tries to balance both factions, keeps the peace, makes compromises that satisfy no one but keep the pack from tearing itself apart. She met my eyes steadily. But I think you scare him. Not because you're weak, but because you're exactly what my grandmother predicted. The catalyst that will force him to choose a side instead of staying neutral. The mate bond pulsed, and I wondered if Rowan could feel me thinking about him, analyzing him through his daughter's perspective. There's something else, Kira said, her voice dropping lower. Something you need to know before the second trial. She glanced at the door as if checking for eavesdroppers. Callum is calling for the rite of severance. Ice slid down my spine. What's that? An ancient ritual, Kira said, her young face grave. Used when the pack questions whether a Luna is truly chosen by the moon goddess or simply manipulating power she has no right to wield. The Luna must undergo a trial by ordeal. The pack's magic itself judges her worthiness. If she passes, her claim is unquestionable. If she fails, she trailed off. She dies, I finished flatly. Consumed by the very magic she tried to claim, Kira confirmed. It's been invoked 3 times in our history. 2 Lunas died. 1 survived but was so damaged she could never shift again, never channel power. She lived another decade as basically human before taking her own life. My hands had started shaking. I set down the bread before I dropped it. Can Callum actually force this? Demand the right? If he gets enough council support, yes, and he's been gathering it all afternoon, using your hybrid form as proof that you're unnatural, that the throne has been corrupted by your human upbringing. Kira's hands clenched into fists. He's arguing that the second and third trials aren't enough, that only the right can truly prove the throne chose correctly. When would this happen? After the third trial, assuming you pass both remaining tests. Kira reached across the table, gripping my hand with surprising strength. Laura, you need allies. Real ones, not just me and the younger wolves. You need pack members with influence who can counter Callum's rhetoric. I have Elder Thea, I said, though even I could hear how weak that sounded. Thea is respected, but she's old. Most see her as living in the past, too attached to the moonborn legacy to be objective. Kira hesitated, then plunged ahead. You need my father fully on your side, not balanced between factions but committed. If Alpha Rowan publicly declares his support, claims you not just as chosen Luna but as his mate, Callum's faction loses most of its power. The mate bond flared at the suggestion, and I felt Rowan's response even though he was somewhere else in the pack house. Surprise, fear, longing, resistance all tangled together. Your father isn't ready for that, I said quietly. We barely know each other. The bond is forced, artificial. The bond is real, Kira interrupted firmly. I can see it when you're together. The way he watches you, the way you unconsciously orient toward each other. My mother has been dead 5 years, Laura. Dad has mourned, has honored her memory. But he's still Alpha. And this pack needs a mated pair to survive what's coming. She squeezed my hand harder. The throne knew what it was doing when it chose both of you. I thought about Rowan's confession that morning, about the terror in his voice when he'd admitted the half-formed bond would tear him apart if I died, about the respect and recognition I'd felt flowing through our connection. Even if I wanted to push for that, I said slowly, we still have 2 trials left. The right of severance looming if I survive. And somewhere out there, rogues are hunting what's left of the Moonborn bloodline. I met Kira's eyes. What if I'm not strong enough? What if your father commits to me and I fail anyway? Then you fail together, Kira said simply. That's what being mated means. That's what being Alpha and Luna means. She released my hand and sat back. But you won't fail. I've seen the way the throne's power flows through you. I've felt the shift in pack magic since you sat in it. Like something that's been broken for 50 years is finally starting to heal. Before I could respond, another knock sounded. This time, when the door opened, Rowan stood there. His eyes went immediately to Kira, then to me. And I felt his concern through the bond. Kira, your mother's family is here for dinner. They're asking for you. It was clearly a dismissal. Kira rose, squeezing my shoulder as she passed. Remember what I said. Allies, Laura. Build them before Callum builds a case against you that even the throne can't overcome. She left, and suddenly I was alone with Rowan, the mate bond humming between us like a plucked string. She told you about the right, he said, not a question. Yes. His jaw clenched. I won't let it happen. I'll use Alpha authority to block it if necessary. Which will only prove Callum right, I said tiredly. That I'm manipulating you through the mate bond, that the throne has corrupted your judgment. I stood, crossing to the window. He's going to push for this no matter what we do. Rowan moved behind me. I felt him through the bond before I heard him. Then we prove him wrong. You pass the next 2 trials perfectly. Show the pack that you're not just powerful but wise, worthy. His hands hovered near my shoulders, not quite touching. And I stand with you. Publicly. Completely. I turned to face him, searching his storm-gray eyes. Are you ready for that? To claim me as your mate in front of the entire pack? No, he admitted. But I will be. Because Kira's right. The throne knew exactly what it was doing. The bond pulsed with his certainty, his growing acceptance, and underneath it all, the first fragile threads of something that might eventually become more than fate and duty. Might eventually become choice. I woke gasping in darkness so complete I couldn't see my own hands. For a disorienting moment I thought I'd gone blind, then realized the moon had set and dawn was still hours away. The Luna's chambers were silent except for my ragged breathing and the thunderous pounding of my heart. The vision clung to my mind like cobwebs, refusing to dissipate even as consciousness returned. I could still see it playing behind my eyelids, images so vivid they seemed more real than the bed beneath me, more tangible than the cool air against my sweat-soaked skin. The throne's power stirred in my blood, and I understood with sudden, terrible clarity. This wasn't a nightmare. This was a seer's vision. The prophetic gift my grandmother had wielded, now awakening in me as the throne transferred more of its ancient magic. I stumbled from the bed, my legs shaking, and barely made it to the wash basin before my stomach rebelled. When the retching finally stopped, I splashed cold water on my face with trembling hands, trying to ground myself in physical sensation. Trying to separate what I'd seen from what was real. But seers didn't see fantasies. They saw truth. Past, present, or future, sometimes all 3 twisted together in ways that only made sense after events had already unfolded. I pressed my palms against the cool stone of the washstand and forced myself to remember every detail before they could fade. The vision had started in the mountains. I'd been looking down from some impossible height, seeing the Northern Pack's territory spread out below like a map. Snow-capped peaks to the north. Dense forest to the east and south. And there, in a valley hidden between 2 ridges, a gathering. Rogues. At least 20 of them, maybe more. They'd made camp in a clearing where no pack patrols would easily find them, their fires carefully shielded by rock formations. But I'd seen them clearly in the vision. Seen their eyes gleaming gold in the darkness. Not the warm amber of pack wolves, but something colder, hungrier. And at the center of the camp, standing with authority that made even the largest rogues defer, a figure in a hooded cloak. I'd strained to see their face, but the vision had kept it shrouded in shadow, as if even prophetic sight had limits. But I'd heard their voice, distorted, disguised, yet somehow familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. "The Moonborn heir has revealed herself," the figure had said, their words carrying across the camp. "Sitting in the throne like she has any right to it. Like her bloodline hasn't already caused enough damage to the natural order. The Alpha will protect her," one of the rogues had growled. "The whole pack surrounds her now. We can't get close. We don't need to get close, not yet." The hooded figure had gestured, and I'd seen something clutched in their hand. A pendant identical to my Moonborn seal, but tarnished, corrupted, pulsing with sickly green light instead of silver blue. Let her pass her precious trials. Let her think she's safe, accepted, worthy. Then when the pack gathers for the Luna's blessing ceremony, they'd trailed off meaningfully. "We strike during the ceremony itself," another rogue had finished, understanding dawning. "Maximum chaos, maximum casualties. And maximum opportunity," the hooded figure had agreed. "The Moonborn line ends where it should have ended 50 years ago. This time, we make sure there are no survivors, no hidden heirs, no prophecies waiting to resurrect what should stay dead." The vision had shifted then, time folding backward like pages in a book being rifled in reverse. Suddenly I wasn't seeing the present or future, but the past. 50 years ago. The night of the massacre. I'd watched my grandmother standing in the ceremonial chamber, the Luna's throne glowing behind her. She'd known they were coming. I could see it in her silver blue eyes, the same color mine became when the throne's power flowed through me. She'd been waiting, dressed in formal robes, the Moonborn seal bright against her chest. The doors had burst open. Rogues had poured in, 20 strong, their eyes gleaming with bloodlust and promised payment. My grandmother hadn't run, hadn't fought. She'd simply stood there, hands raised, and begun to chant in a language I didn't recognize but somehow understood. Blood magic, the same kind my mother had used to hide me. But she hadn't been casting protection. She'd been weaving a trap. "You think you can kill prophecy?" she'd asked the rogues as blue light erupted around her. "You think you can stop what the moon goddess herself has set in motion? My death changes nothing. My granddaughter will return. She will sit this throne, and she will finish what I started." Then, just as the rogues had lunged, I'd seen it. Movement from the shadows behind my grandmother. A figure who'd been hiding in the chamber, who shouldn't have been there at all. Someone wearing pack colors, bearing pack scent. Someone who'd driven a silver blade between my grandmother's shoulders before she could complete her spell. The betrayer's face had been turned away, obscured, but I'd seen enough. Saw the scarred hands gripping the blade, saw the council ring gleaming on one finger. The vision had shattered then, and I'd woken gasping. Now, in the pre-dawn darkness, I gripped the washstand hard enough to hurt, trying to process what I'd seen. The rogues gathering for another attack. The hooded figure with the corrupted Moonborn seal. How had they gotten that? The Luna's blessing ceremony being targeted. When was that? Days? Weeks? And the betrayer? Someone from within the pack. Someone who'd helped murder my grandmother and had gotten away with it for 50 years. Someone who might still be here. I needed to tell Rowan. Needed to warn the pack. But who could I trust with this information when I'd just seen proof that the massacre had been an inside job? The mate bond suddenly flared with alarm, and I realized Rowan had felt my distress through our connection. Moments later, pounding footsteps in the corridor, Then the door flew open without ceremony. Rowan stood in the doorway, his hair disheveled, wearing only sleep pants, his eyes wild with the terror he'd felt through the bond. What happened? I felt... He stopped, taking in my appearance. Sweat-soaked nightgown, shaking hands, the pallor of my skin. A vision. It wasn't a question. He'd lived with my grandmother long enough to recognize the signs. "They're coming," I said, and my voice sounded hollow, distant. "The rogues. During some ceremony called the Luna's Blessing. They're going to attack when the whole pack is gathered, vulnerable." I met his eyes. "And Rowan, they're not working alone. Someone in the pack helped them 50 years ago. Someone who's still here." His face went very still. "You saw who?" "No, not clearly, but I saw..." I stopped, uncertain how to voice suspicions that could tear the pack apart. "I saw scarred hands, a council ring." The implication hung between us, heavy and terrible. "Callum," Rowan said quietly. "You're describing Callum." "I don't know for certain. The vision showed me fragments, not a complete picture. It could be..." "How long?" Rowan interrupted. "Until the attack?" "I don't know. The vision didn't show me that. Just that it happens during the Luna's Blessing, whenever that is." 3 weeks, Rowan said grimly. "After the trials are complete. After the new Luna is formally accepted by the pack." His jaw clenched. "We gather in the ceremonial amphitheater, the entire pack in one place. Maximum vulnerability, just like they said." He began pacing, his alpha mind already working through scenarios, strategies. But I was still caught in the vision's aftermath, still seeing my grandmother's face as she'd stood calmly waiting for death, weaving magic with her final breaths. "She knew," I whispered. "My grandmother knew she was going to die. Saw it coming and walked into it anyway, because she was buying time. Buying me." Rowan stopped pacing and crossed to me, his hands finally settling on my shoulders. Warm, solid, real. "And she saw you here now, with the power to stop what she couldn't. That's why she wove the summoning. Why she forced this destiny on you." His eyes searched mine. "Can you do it, Laura? Can you finish what she started?" I thought about the hybrid form, the strength flowing through me during the first trial, about the throne's magic pulsing in my blood, carrying centuries of Luna power, about my mother sacrificing 23 years, about my grandmother walking calmly to her death, all to ensure I would stand exactly here, exactly now. "I don't have a choice," I said. "That's the thing about prophecy. It's not about what I want. It's about what has to happen." "Then we prepare," Rowan said, his voice hardening with alpha authority. "You pass the next 2 trials. I root out the traitor, and when they come for you during the Luna's Blessing..." "We're ready," I finished. The mate bond pulsed between us, carrying determination and shared purpose and the beginning of real partnership. Outside, the first pale light of dawn touched the mountains, where rogues were gathering, led by someone who'd stolen a moonborn seal and corrupted it for murder. The throne's power stirred, and I knew with seer certainty. The second trial would test wisdom, and I would need every scrap of it to survive what was coming. The second trial had tested wisdom, forcing me to navigate a maze of pack law and ancient traditions, while council members fired questions designed to expose my ignorance. I'd passed, barely, drawing on my grandmother's journal and the throne's whispered guidance flowing through my blood. The third trial had tested spirit. 3 days alone in the wilderness, hunted by the pack's best trackers, while I learned to trust my awakening instincts. I'd survived that too, returning with my confidence strengthened and my hybrid form more controlled. But nothing had prepared me for this. The full moon hung heavy and silver above the ceremonial amphitheater, its light turning the assembled pack into a sea of faces painted in shades of gray and white. Every wolf in the northern pack had gathered, hundreds of them, filling the stone seats, crowding the edges, their combined power making the air thick and electric. The Luna's blessing ceremony was supposed to be a celebration, the formal acceptance of a new Luna after she'd passed all 3 trials. Instead, it felt like an execution. I stood at the center of the marked ground, wearing the ceremonial robes Thea had prepared. Deep blue velvet embroidered with silver, thread that formed the phases of the moon across my shoulders and down my arms. The moonborn seal rested against my chest, gleaming in the moonlight. My platinum braids were woven with silver ribbons, and the runes that now lived beneath my skin pulsed faintly visible, responding to the full moon's pull. Rowan stood at the edge of the circle in his formal alpha regalia, his expression carefully neutral, but I felt his fury through the mate bond. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to go. He was supposed to publicly claim me, seal the mate bond before the pack, and complete my ascension as Luna. Callum had other plans. "I invoke the right of severance," the scarred council member declared, his voice carrying across the amphitheater with the weight of ancient authority. He stood opposite Rowan, backed by at least a third of the pack. The traditionalists, who'd fought every step of my trials, who saw my very existence as an affront. This woman has passed the trials through trickery and manipulation. The throne has been corrupted by human weakness, by bloodline magic that should have died 50 years ago. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some agreeing, others protesting. Kira and the younger wolves were on their feet, shouting objections, but Callum raised his scarred hand for silence. "Pack law is clear," he continued. "When a Luna's claim is disputed by council members representing significant pack faction, the right may be invoked. Let the moon goddess herself judge whether this half-blood pretender is worthy, or whether she has deceived us all." "This is madness," Rowan growled, his alpha power radiating outward in waves. "She has passed 3 trials. The throne has accepted her. What more proof do you need? Proof that she is moonborn by right, not by theft," Callum shot back. "Proof that the throne chose her and wasn't forced by blood magic woven by a desperate exile." His eyes, cold and calculating, fixed on me. "If her claim is true, the right will confirm it. If not—" He smiled without warmth. "The moon goddess has little mercy for those who would desecrate her gifts." I felt the trap closing. If I refused the right, I looked guilty, afraid, unworthy. If I accepted, I faced magic designed to burn false Lunas from the inside out. Either way, Callum won. Unless I changed the game entirely. "You want proof of my bloodline?" I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs. I reached into the folds of my ceremonial robes and withdrew my mother's journal, the one Thea and I had found in the hidden archives. "Then hear the truth from the mouths of those who lived it." I opened to a marked page, my mother's elegant handwriting visible even in the moonlight. These are the words of Elena Sylvain, written 23 years ago. "I was 16 when they came for us, the faction my mother had warned the pack about, traditionalists who believed Luna priestesses held too much power." My voice strengthened as I read, carrying to every corner of the amphitheater. They hired rogues from the southern territories, 20 of them against my mother and father and the few council members who remained loyal. "Anyone could have written that," Callum interrupted. "Anyone could forge—" "The massacre lasted 3 hours," I continued, reading over his objection. "I hid in the archives while they butchered everyone I loved. When silence finally fell, Elder Thea found me. She brought terrible news. My father was dead. My mother was dead. 17 pack members lay slaughtered in the ceremonial chamber. I looked up, meeting Callum's eyes directly. And I was pregnant with the heir they would have killed if they'd known she existed." The amphitheater had gone deadly silent. Even the traditionalists looked uncomfortable now, confronted with the stark reality of the massacre they'd tried to forget. "My mother sacrificed her life to hide me," I said, closing the journal. "She used blood magic so powerful it aged her prematurely, killed her decades before her time, all to keep me safe from those who wanted the moonborn bloodline extinguished. And you dare call me a pretender? Pretty words, Callum said, but I heard uncertainty creeping into his voice. But words prove nothing. The throne's power exploded through me before he could finish. I hadn't called it consciously, hadn't reached for the connection. But the full moon overhead, the weight of accusation, the echo of my mother's words, something in the combination triggered a response deeper than thought, older than reason. Blue light erupted from my body, from the moonborn seal, from the very ground beneath my feet. The symbols carved into the ceremonial circle flared brilliant silver, connecting to form a web of power that stretched across the entire amphitheater. Wolves cried out in shock, some scrambling backward, others frozen in awe. And then the visions came, not just in my mind, but visible to everyone, projected into the air above us like living memories made manifest. I saw my grandmother standing in the ceremonial chamber, saw the rogues bursting in, saw her weaving her final spell with blood magic and prophecy, saw the scarred hands driving a blade between her shoulders. This time, the betrayer's face wasn't hidden. Everyone could see what I'd seen in my prophetic vision. The pack erupted in chaos. "Lies!" Callum shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the uproar. "Illusions! She's manipulating." "The throne doesn't lie." Thea's voice cut through the noise, ancient and implacable. "What you're seeing is truth recorded in the Luna's magic itself, preserved for 50 years until an heir strong enough to reveal it finally sat the seat." More visions poured forth. My mother fleeing pregnant and alone. The blood magic concealment that had hidden me. The rogues who'd hunted me when it broke. And finally, the hooded figure in the mountains, the corrupted moonborn seal, the planned attack during this very ceremony. "They're coming tonight," I said, and my voice had changed. Layered with harmonics that weren't entirely mine. The throne was speaking through me, channeling the power of every Luna who'd ever sat it. The same faction that murdered Sylvain Moonborn has regrouped. They're in the mountains right now, waiting for the signal to attack while we're gathered, vulnerable, distracted by internal conflict. I turned to face Callum directly, and the blue light intensified around me. "You wanted the rite of severance? Wanted the moon goddess to judge my worthiness? Look around you. She's already answered." The full moon overhead seemed to pulse in response, its light focusing down like a spotlight directly onto me. The throne's power roared through my veins, and I felt my hybrid form beginning to manifest, not from fear or combat, but from pure, undeniable authority. "I am Laura Sylvain," I declared, my voice resonating with power that made the stone seats vibrate. "Daughter of Elena, granddaughter of Sylvain Moonborn, heir to the Luna priestesses, who ruled beside Alphas for 12 generations. The throne has claimed me. The moon goddess has marked me. And I will not stand here defending my right to exist while enemies gather to destroy everything my family died to protect." I raised my hands, and the blue light coalesced into visible runes that spiraled up my arms, across my shoulders, wreathing my head like a crown of living magic. When I spoke again, it wasn't just my voice. It was my grandmother's, my mother's, every moonborn Luna echoing through me in a chorus of power and prophecy. "The choice is yours, Northern Pack. Stand with your Luna and face the coming battle united, or fracture from within and die as the enemy hoped you would 50 years ago." The visions faded, but the power remained, pulsing from me in waves that every wolf could feel. The amphitheater was utterly silent except for the sound of hundreds of wolves breathing in synchronized shock. Then Rowan moved. He crossed the ceremonial circle in 3 strides, his alpha power rising to meet the throne's magic. When he reached me, he dropped to one knee, baring his throat in a gesture of submission and acceptance that sent gasps rippling through the crowd. "I claim you," he said, his voice carrying clearly. "Laura Sylvain, moonborn heir, chosen Luna. I claim you as my mate before the pack and the moon goddess herself." The mate bond flared so bright I gasped, the half-formed connection suddenly solidifying, completing, becoming unbreakable. I felt everything he felt, his certainty, his pride, his terror that he'd almost lost me to political games while real enemies circled closer. Kira was next, dropping to her knees beside her father. Then Thea. Then the younger wolves, dozens of them, all kneeling in acceptance. And finally, slowly, even some of the traditionalists began to kneel. Not all. Callum and his core supporters remained standing, their faces twisted with fury and denial. But enough. More than enough. I looked at Callum, at the scarred hands my vision had shown me, and spoke with my own voice now, no longer channeling ancestral power. You can invoke your right of severance if you want, but it won't change what's coming. Won't stop the rogues in the mountains. Won't undo 50 years of secrets and betrayal. I held his gaze steadily. So make your choice. Fight beside me or get out of my way. The full moon reached its apex overhead, and in the distance, so faint most wolves wouldn't hear it yet, came the sound of howls. The enemy was coming, and the Luna's blessing ceremony was about to become a battlefield. The howls grew louder, closer, echoing off the mountainsides that surrounded the amphitheater like the walls of a trap. The pack erupted into controlled chaos, warriors shifting into wolf form, non-combatants being ushered toward the pack house, the acrid scent of fear and adrenaline thick in the air. But Callum's voice cut through it all, sharp and desperate. This is exactly what I warned you about. She brings war to our doorstep, draws our enemies here with her cursed bloodline, and you would accept her as Luna? The war was always coming, Rowan snarled, his alpha power making several nearby wolves drop their gazes involuntarily. Sylvain saw it. Elena died trying to prevent it, and now it's here whether we're ready or not. He turned to face the assembled pack, his voice carrying with absolute authority. But Callum is right about one thing. We cannot go into battle divided. Cannot fight external enemies while uncertainty tears us apart from within. The mate bond pulsed with warning, and I felt what Rowan was about to do a split second before he said it. I decree a final trial, he announced. Not the rite of severance. That ritual was designed to punish, not to prove. Instead, let Laura face the Luna's trial in its truest form. Let her lead us in battle. Let her stand beside me as we defend this pack from those who would destroy it. If she survives, if her power and wisdom protect our people, then no one, not even you, Callum, can question her right to the throne. The howls were close now. Minutes away, maybe less. I could feel the rogues approaching through the throne's connection to pack territory, sense their bloodlust and corrupted magic like a sickness spreading across the land. And if she fails? Callum demanded. If her inexperience gets pack members killed? Then I will bear that failure as much as she does, Rowan said, and through the bond I felt the weight of what he was offering. We rise together or fall together. That's what it means to be mated alphas. Thea stepped forward, her ancient eyes gleaming in the moonlight. The Luna's trial has always been about more than individual tests. It's about proving you can protect the pack when it matters most. She looked at me with something that might have been pride or might have been farewell. The throne chose you for this moment, child. Now show us why. I could feel every eye on me, hopeful, fearful, hostile, desperate. Could feel the weight of centuries of Luna priestesses who'd stood exactly where I was standing, facing impossible choices with inadequate preparation. The throne's power surged, and suddenly I understood what my grandmother had woven into its magic. Not just strength or visions or the ability to shift into hybrid form. She'd embedded tactical knowledge, battle strategies used by Lunas dating back to the pack's founding. Ancient wisdom waiting to be unlocked when it was needed most. How many rogues? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear churning in my gut. 20, based on the howls, Nadia reported, her earlier hostility temporarily forgotten in the face of real threat. Maybe 25, all converging on this location. They'll expect us to scatter, I said. and the words came from somewhere deeper than my own experience. The throne was guiding me, showing me patterns. Expect us to panic, to divide our forces trying to protect the non-combatants and defend the territory simultaneously. So we don't scatter, Rowan said, understanding immediately. We make them come to us. The amphitheater, I continued, my mind racing through scenarios the throne's magic laid out like a map. It's defensible. Stone walls, limited entry points. We evacuate the vulnerable to the packhouse cellars, then draw the rogues here where superior numbers mean nothing if they can't surround us. Kira pushed through the crowd, her young face set with determination. I'll lead the evacuation. Get the children and elderly to safety. No, I said, and saw her expression flash with hurt before I continued. You're one of our best fighters. I need you here. I looked at Thea. Can you lead the evacuation? They'll follow you without question. The ancient woman nodded, already moving. Come, anyone who cannot fight with me now. The pack split with practiced efficiency. Those with young children or healing injuries following Thea toward the pack house, while warriors remained, forming defensive positions around the amphitheater's perimeter. I watched them move, saw the mix of wolves who'd accepted me and those who still doubted, and felt the enormity of what Rowan had done. He'd tied my survival to theirs, made my trial their trial. If I led them well, I proved myself. If I failed, people would die, and their blood would be on my hands. The mate bond flared as Rowan appeared at my side. Second thoughts? He asked quietly. Hundreds, I admitted, but no time for them. Good. His hand found mine, warm and solid. The throne chose you. I choose you. Now choose yourself, Laura. Be the Luna they need. The first rogue burst from the tree line, a massive dark wolf with eyes that gleamed sickly gold in the moonlight. Then another. Another. They poured out of the forest like a flood, more than 20, easily 30, all moving with the coordinated precision of trained killers. And at their center, the hooded figure from my vision, still obscured by shadow and magic, the corrupted moonborn seal pulsing green around their neck. Defensive formation! Rowan roared, his alpha command making every wolf snap to attention. Laura, with me at the center. Kira, left flank. Jensen, right. Nadia, you're our eyes. Call out their movements. I let the hybrid form take me, the transformation smooth and controlled now, after days of practice. Silver blue light erupted along my skin, runes blazing to life, my senses expanding to encompass the entire battlefield. Through the throne's connection, I could feel the pack's positions, their strengths, their fears. The rogues hit our lines like a wave against stone. Chaos erupted, snarls and screams, the crack of bone, the copper scent of blood. But the throne's wisdom guided me, showing me where to direct power, who needed support, how to read the flow of battle like my grandmother must have done centuries ago. Left flank collapsing, Nadia called, and I saw it through the throne's awareness. 3 rogues overwhelming 2 younger warriors. I channeled power through the mate bond, amplifying Rowan's alpha command. Hold the line. Kira, reinforce left. Blue energy pulsed from me in waves, strengthening pack members it touched, making them faster, stronger, more coordinated. This was what the throne was designed for, not just individual power, but the ability to unite the pack into a single fighting force. The hooded figure moved through the battle untouched, rogues parting around them like water around stone. They were heading straight for me, the corrupted seal glowing brighter with each step. Laura! Rowan's warning came through the bond as the figure raised their hands, green energy crackling between their fingers. I met the attack with the throne's blue light, and where the 2 forces collided, reality itself seemed to scream. The corrupted magic tried to overwhelm me, tried to burn through my defenses and consume me the way it had consumed whoever wore that stolen seal. But I wasn't alone. The mate bond flared as Rowan's strength poured into me. The pack's acceptance, their growing trust, fed the throne's power, And underneath it all, I felt my grandmother's presence, my mother's sacrifice, every moonborn Luna who'd ever lived lending me their strength. "You should have stayed hidden," the hooded figure hissed, their voice still disguised but familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. "Should have died quietly like your mother instead of forcing us to destroy the entire pack to eliminate you." "Who are you?" I demanded, blue light intensifying around me. "Show yourself." The hood fell back, and my blood turned to ice. Not Callum. Not any council member I'd suspected. Nadia stood before me, her elegant features twisted with hatred, the corrupted seal burning against her chest like a brand. "I've waited 50 years for this," she snarled. "Waited and planned and ensured that when the moonborn line finally revealed itself, I would be here to end it permanently." The battle seemed to freeze around us, wolves on both sides stopping mid-strike as they registered the betrayal. "Why?" Rowan's voice was raw with shock and fury. "Because Sylvain saw too much," Nadia spat. "Saw my family's plans to take control of the Northern Pack, to eliminate the weak alphas who bent to Luna wisdom instead of ruling with proper strength. She would have exposed us, destroyed everything we'd built. Her eyes fixed on me with pure venom. So we destroyed her first, and we've been waiting for her heir ever since." The corrupted seal pulsed, and Nadia's form began to change. Not into a wolf, but into something monstrous, twisted by decades of hatred and dark magic. "The trial isn't over," I said quietly, feeling the throne's power reach its peak within me. "But it's about to be." I channeled everything, the throne's ancient magic, Rowan's alpha strength through our bond, the pack's collective will to survive. Blue light exploded outward in a nova of pure power, meeting Nadia's corrupted green energy in a clash that shook the mountainside. When the light finally faded, Nadia lay broken at the center of the amphitheater, the corrupted seal shattered, the rogues scattered or dead. And I stood in the Luna's throne. I didn't remember sitting, but the throne had materialized beneath me, responding to my need, claiming me fully and absolutely before the entire pack. Rowan stood at my right hand, bloodied but alive. Kira at my left. And kneeling before us, even those who doubted, even Callum with his scarred hands and traditional values, bowed their heads in acceptance. "The trial is complete," Thea said, emerging from the pack house with those she'd protected. Her voice carried clearly in the battle-quiet air. "The Luna has proven herself in combat, in wisdom, in the strength to protect her people." She met my eyes. "Welcome home, Laura Sylvain, Luna of the Northern Pack." The pack erupted in howls, celebration and mourning and acceptance all woven together. Through the mate bond, I felt Rowan's pride, his relief, his growing love for the woman I was becoming. The throne pulsed beneath me, satisfied. The trials were over. The betrayer exposed and defeated. The immediate threat neutralized. But in the mountains beyond our territory, I could still sense movement. More rogues, more enemies. The faction Nadia had served was larger than we'd known, and they wouldn't stop just because one of their agents had fallen. I looked at Rowan, at my pack, at the throne that had chosen me and the destiny I'd finally accepted. The trials were over. The real war was just beginning. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.